this is all about soybean cyst nematode and sampling. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about soybean cyst. So soybean cyst nematode is an exotic pathogen, and it was introduced to the U.S. in the 1950s. It was first found in North Dakota in 2003, and it's spreading across the state. And this is really important because this is the most significant soybean disease threat we have in the U.S. Bar none. There's nothing that comes close to soybean cyst. Soybean cyst will take yield all by itself, but it will also bring in things like sudden death syndrome. It'll make brown stem rot worse, and those root rots that you see in soybeans, yeah, it'll make some of them worse too. So this is a big deal. Now, soybean cyst is a parasitic worm. Think like a heartworm of the dog or something. This is a very different pathogen, and the way it moves is we move it. So this is a microscopic worm. You can see the cyst in the cyst form, but that's the only thing you can see. A mass migration might be an inch. It just doesn't move by itself. But what we do when we bring equipment into a field, when we have flood water, when we've got 40-mile-an-hour winds that are blowing dust and sand everywhere, we're moving cyst. Now, it's really important to see if you've got cyst, partly because you can manage it. But you can manage it a lot better if you find it early. Once the egg population blows up in your field, it's very difficult to have a good crop. So soybean cyst, it will impact the roots. It'll create these little cysts on the roots. The cysts are full of eggs, and the eggs are what we want to do, what we want to detect to find it. Okay, and so that's what all this stuff is about, right? So if you turn it over to the side, the sheet, turn it to the side that has the colored pictures. Okay, on the bottom. The bottom right-hand corner is some survey work that you guys all did, the growers did, with these sample bags last year. And what you can see there, and it's pretty small, but what you can see is where we have hot spots of cyst. And you can see them in Cass County, Richland County, and Southern Trail County in very high levels. At levels above 10,000, you are really going to struggle to grow decent soybeans, at least in spots of the fields. But what you can also see is it's spreading out from that area. And you in this area will get cyst. I don't know when, but you will get it. And so I would encourage you to sample it. The other reason I'm encouraging you to sample this right away is because when you do get it, you don't see any above ground symptoms until you're taking about a 30% yield hit. So the only way you find it early is sampling it. All you do is take some soil cores, mix them up, throw them in the bag, follow the directions on that sheet, put your information here, make sure the number you put on that sheet as well, and they'll mail you your results. Now for sampling, what you want to do is try to think like the parasitic worm. Anybody here good thinking like a parasitic worm? Yeah, probably not, right? All right, so think about how cyst would get into a field. It's coming on soil. Field entrance is probably the most common way you get cyst into a field. It's coming on equipment that's dirty, right? That's the most common way. Another way, flood water. Cysts are small, they'll float, they'll move through water, but they also blow. So if you look at this diagram, this one above the map is a diagram produced by Iowa State. You can see some of these hot spot areas. So you've got a field entrance, you've got low spots. In Iowa, they don't really have trees, so they have fence lines. We have shelter belts, and that's a common way you might find cyst, is when the cysts are blowing, the eggs are blowing, the eddy currents will deposit you right down next to that shelter belt. Lots of times that's a hot spot. And then one key area I want you all to think about is yellow spots that show up in August. We don't care about yellow spots in June. That's IDC or something else, root rots, whatever. But when you see yellow spots that show up in August, small yellow spots, that's really saying there's something wrong with the stem or the roots, and commonly that's soybean cyst. When I was driving out here today, I could see quite a few of those spots, especially in Cass County, a little bit into Barnes. I'd put money on a lot of them being soybean cyst. Okay, so field entrance, low spots, shelter belts, and any area that shows up in yellow spots in August. That's where I'd encourage you to sample. Take a soil probe, a shovel, take a bunch of samples in one of those likely areas, mix it up, put it in the bag, fill out that sheet, and send it in the egg vise. You'll get your results mailed to you. Yeah, exactly. The question was where in the rows, for example. You want to take a soil probe or a shovel and aim for the roots. This thing doesn't live in between the rows. It lives on the roots. So pierce the roots, get the roots. Okay, that's a great question. if you do decide to take it up and try to look for it yourself, sometimes you can see them if you got high levels. Make sure you take the whole root ball, because if you pull it up like this, the soybean cyst is basically holding on by her mouth, for lack of a better visual. She'll fall right off.
So how effective are the soybean cyst nematode variety of beans in resisting damage to the nematodes?
Good question. So how effective is the resistance? Unfortunately, it varies. But in beans that have good resistance and have a good package of it, it's very good. It is very good resistance. And I should give a plug for some soybean cyst nematode field days that we're having in the valley. There's one in Richland, one in Cass, and one in Trail County. They're in the middle of the month. I think it's the 18th, 22nd, 23rd. The reason I bring that up is we've got a variety trial that's funded through the Soybean Council at each one of those sites where you can look at some of the resistance. We've also got soybean cyst nematode seed treatment trials there too. And more bags, if you want more bags. The only two crop hosts that we worry about are edibles and soybeans. It will attack edibles. Frankly, I'm a little bit more worried about it on edibles because we don't have resistance in edibles.
Once you have it, you never get rid of it.
That's right. Once you have it, you own it. Unfortunately, the hot spots they've seen in Iowa are still hot that showed up in the 1960s.
Sam, how about dirt-stained soybean seed? Is there enough dirt in there to host a cyst, like on the seed itself?
If you have soil pads in a seed bag, yes, cysts can travel that way. It probably travels much, much less that way than equipment, but it is possible.